Geschlechter, denen, die sie hacken, ist der nächste Talk.
The gender to those who hacked them.
Bitte schön, heißt Sie willkommen.
From Jin, Luz, and so Neftus.
Selbstbestimmung, selbst gemacht.
We are
Wie der Titel schon war. Und jetzt brauche ich die nächste Slide.
self-determination, self-made. And now I need the next slide. Or what does Hacken and sweating in the sauna and self-determination have in common? You all have asked this yourself, probably. Well, nothing except if you put a sauna in front of the Bundestag and invite politicians to speak with you about a law that Luz will talk about in a moment. This is what self-determination, self-made did to get into headlines, and we thought we would enter this talk here because there's, for some reason, extremely many trans humans in this room, and I think I'm gonna steal one of your favorite sentences. The mainstream politics are too fascist for us, and we thought we... Well, now over to Luz, who was there when all of this started. Thank you all for being here. I thought I'd tell you a bit about what self-determination, self-made is and what we do. And the goal of this is to inform you about what the situation is with laws for trans, inter, and non-binary or agender people. And the other aspect of this talk is to maybe get you to work with us, together with us, to improve the situation here in Germany. So what do we want? We are self-determination, self-made. We are a trans, inter, non-binary, agender action group. And we founded ourselves in 2023 when we first saw the draft for the Self-Determination Act here in Germany. And you might remember the Self-Determination Act took effect this year on the 1st of November and replaced the Transsexuals Act, which is the original name, not a translation decision. And that Transsexuals Act was a pathologizing law, and it had a long list of requirements in order for you to change your legal name and gender. For example, until 2011, the sterilization or making your outer appearance match this, and also you were forced to divorce. And the Federal Constitutional Court in multiple instances has decided that these things violate the German Constitution. The free expression of your personality, that is not a small thing. This means that until 2011 or even 2024, the laws regarding trans people was against the German Constitution. So what did our government do? They proposed an alternative law, and this alternative law is unfortunately very bad. And I will tell you a few more things about this later. But before we get into that, I want to tell you that we as self-determination, self-made, we sat down and we wrote a better law. Thank you.
Wir haben ein eigenes, besseres Gesetz geschrieben.
We wrote our own law, which is better. And this better law, just to motivate you a little bit, is based in contrast to the government idea of the law, not on dozens of exceptions or hurdles, just on, it is only based on one principle, which is whether you are capable of determining your own gender. And we believe that all people, trans, cis, inter, non-binary, agender, should have the right to determine their own gender. And this can be, there's a distinction between the nominal capability to determine your own gender, which is whether you can change your documents, and then the material one, which concerns actually living in this gender. So on one side, there's the paper gender. This is the contract between the state and the citizens. And then on the other side, we have the manifestation of your gender. So, for example, reimbursements for those who have been forced to sterilize themselves under the previous laws, and emancipatory measures. And we will talk about this more in a moment. This means our proposal really concerns everything regarding gender for everyone. But now I'll tell you a bit about what the law of the government, that the government has made, does. So in April it was voted upon, and on the 1st of November it came into effect. And it is at least the end of the pathologization that was part of the Transsexuals Act, which said that you are sick and you need to get certified by medical personnel that you are in fact sick. And then, well, at least we're glad that the Transsexuals Act is over. Well, small applause to the government. But this is Article 1 of the new Self-Determination Act, which is that you can determine your gender and legal name yourselves. But the pathologizing paradigm of the previous law is now replaced with a criminalizing assumption that there's always the danger that this law will be misused for their own bad intentions. For example, to not participate in the military service, or to hack themselves into women's saunas, or to not be sent back to where people fled from. And there's an imbalance here regarding the fear of trans-feminine people, which is very core to this law.
The best well-known part of the law is the House law paragraph that says when is this law valid, and it says, part 1 of this article says, it's always valid in the relation of people to the state, but if there's some economic or private rooms we're not quite sure, there's a very long commentary that says, well, in a private setting, there is the house law, domiciliary right. If you make an event or have a private institution in some way, they can say who can enter, who can't But also there's the common anti-discrimination law that says you should not throw people out because of their social orientation or gender. The problem is we don't know what to do with that, so we'll just see what happens, see what the courts say. So there's long commentaries on stuff about how is it with women's saunas, women's sport clubs, women's prisons, and the line is always the same. The line is, well, we don't really know. The common anti-discrimination law is valid. The domiciliary law is also valid, but we'll pull ourselves out of here. That's a depoliticization. The federal government says there will be some thing there, and courts will say who has access to women's shelters, saunas, and so on and so forth. They are waiting for that on these cases and for these decisions. And what we can say now is the political deciders went away from deciding something politically because they said this topic is too hot for us. We don't want to decide about these as political deciders. We didn't want to decide who can access certain spaces and who doesn't. So they pointed to another space of the political apparatus, and that was the courts. So that's a depolitization, a justicialization. And you thought that political decisions are like collective decisions. We've waited for the political decision for a long time because the Transsexuals Act was always like little decisions, individual decisions, like with access to medical care, change of status and names. These were always court cases, individual cases. And now that it's not the case that the individual name and personal status changes have to be monitored, but always when a trans person goes into a sauna or another space that is like marked as a safer space, there's always a form of monitoring, meaning that the logic of individual cases keeps going on. In the past, okay, you need this individual decision. Now it's like the individual decision is placed on these specific spaces. If there's like an institution only for women or men, whatever. So there's always some monitoring. So the criminalization is still keeping with this individualization. The consequence is the logic of protecting a weak minority, and the law is protecting us, is done. It's good that it's not pathologizing anymore. Thanks, it's good. But a lot of other discriminating aspects are still going on. We can't rely on future federal governments or the government now to protect us. And we'll go on.
So we're here at the Hacker conference, and surveillance and digital rights, that's a topic here I heard over the last years. And one aspect that was thrown out just before it was so as a deal with the opposition, which was giving the opposition the payment card for migrants, and well, the self-determination law no longer then required giving all these changes to 10 different federal agencies like polices, which was originally intended to enable the surveillance of the people who change their names. And, well, now this was removed from the self-determination law, but they almost brought this into a separate law, which is if someone, for any reason, changed their name, made any change to their civil status, this change would have been sent to all of these federal agencies. Surveillance par excellence, which luckily we were able to avoid because the German government collapsed. Well, what are the parallels to surveillance and digital rights? So, of course, first, they're always asking for the maximum of state surveillance. And there's always this small minority which has very bad intentions and that needs to be stopped, things that hackers were never confronted with before. And this giving this information to the federal agencies. This was before Solingen. So we thought, yeah, the government thought that they could do that before the D-Day of the FDP, the Liberal Party of Germany. And, well, when I talk to people in this sphere, lots of them have never heard of this proposed law, which did not come into effect, about giving the data about the changes to the federal agencies. They haven't heard of it. So that's why I wanted to get this stage. And, well, things start with minorities like us trans people, and then they hit the general population, as in this example. So we need to get more dedicated about anti-surveillance and digital rights. We have a full room of people here. There are so many out there, but I almost never hear about this in everyday life. Next slide, I think that's yours.
Das bist du.
Ah ja, Überwachung.
That's you. I am.
Also ich habe euch einen Satz erzählt über das Selbstbestimmungsgesetz der Bundesregierung.
I talked to you before about the Self-Determination Act and the domiciliary rights paragraph in there. And another minority that is endangered is migrant red persons and trans humans, and they are viewed as a danger for our society. And this is especially bad because these people flee to Germany to seek protection from discrimination. And what does the Self-Determination Act of the government say about this? It says in the 2 months after declaring, in the 2 months, so if your change of name and gender can be suspended if your right to stay in Germany is suspended within 2 months after the change of your name and gender, and it will be then revoked in this case, and it will even be viewed as an attempt to circumvent the deportation. So let's unpack this. This means that the Federal Agency for Migration, so this is especially about those who do not have a secured title for residing in Germany. And there's a case where the Federal Office for Migrants wants to keep it secret that somebody is supposed to be deported. So if this person, within the 2 months after using the Self-Determination Act, and this will be viewed by the Federal Office for Migration as an attempt to circumvent the deportation. So humans who are especially in need of protection and who are being discriminated against and are politically powerless sometimes, they are being, well, it is being criminalized that they want to correct their gender and names. So the government has used this attempt at improving rights for trans, inter, agender, non-binary people to criminalize minorities like refugees and those who are read as such. And the federal government did not shy back from using the Self-Determination Act to underline all of the hate they have for these minorities. So this law is intended to help trans, inter, non-binary, agender people, to empower them. But now an abstract idea of protection of cis-endo majority people, so in a law that is not about them at all, but which is about a fantasy of a white cis-endo majority society. So this is being instrumentalized. Yeah, and let's take a look at the election programs of CDU, SPD, Greens, and the left. Well, one of them does not have anything about it. The Greens have the Queer Living Plan, which already existed in this legislative period. They want to continue working on that. And what's important is also what the CDU says. They even say they want to undo the Self-Determination Act. We want to disallow all gender-affirming acts for those under 18. And in general, the CDU, in particular in regards to the Self-Determination Act, the CDU was really trying to be only about 2 fingers apart of the anti-trans, inter, agender, non-binary propaganda of the AfD party, so to be very close to them. So in other countries, we can already see the effects, and especially now, it is very important that all of us, that we come out of the reserves and begin to really actively shoot forward and stay active, become active, connect ourselves better to stop a CDU-led government from happening, but also to strengthen our networks across the borders of trans, inter, non-binary, agender lawmaking. And you might have read it between the lines. There are really strong solidarity options, for example, regarding refugees or data security or health. We are reaching the end of our time, so I'll do this quickly. The electronic patient record, it is forbidden to in any way leak the previous gender and name. But now if all medical personnel can see that I'm trans, how will this work together with it being forbidden to leak the information that I'm trans? And this is an aspect that, yeah, and for example, I don't want my orthopedist knows that I'm trans, because he doesn't need to know that when he's looking at my feet. Yeah, and Zoe can say a bit more about this.
So there were these differential diagnostics before that says if you have this diagnosis, it says you're not trans or probably not. And that meant that people are always lying about their diagnosis. And with the electronic record, it's not possible. This differential diagnosis is not as strong anymore, but it still happens, it's still practiced. So it's important to be able to lie. Illegal instructions and stuff. But health is defined in a way that in the first paragraph, medical things are not regulated in this law. So that's what they're saying. They put it in there to be able to say, we don't want to operate on children, dear CDU or IFD. You just thought about it. That's insane. But people want to do it, and minors also need gender affirming medical interventions sometimes. There's no improvements there, and it only gets worse via different courts. Large parts of care have been crossed away since this year, and so we want to have an additional insurance that covers these things, like a normal health insurance, and supplementary to that, like if you want your teeth financed or whatever, you can have additional insurance, your teeth get paid, because otherwise it counts as a cosmetic operation. And in the same way, I want supplementary insurance for transition costs, not only for transition costs that are very expensive, but there's a whole slew of these culture war topics that are stigmatized and are always badly supported because it's always controversial. So let's put like abortion, neurodiversity, chronic illness, sexual transmittable infections und so weiter. Put that into the supplementary insurance, and we'll have our self-organized space for that, self-organized session. We'll discuss these things there.
So, der Herald steht mir schon auf den Füßen.
The Herald is standing on my feet. These are the events we already have. Please keep looking at this. I think culture war. Supplementary insurance is a great name. We are always happy to happen with anyone. We are not that not experts on the electronic files or surveillance, but we're here and we love talking to you. Talk with us outside. This is to other groups and individuals. We are happy to work with you, and the more we are, the better it gets, and the lower the possibility that things goes hard wrong. We have a little bit of know-how and ideas, but we don't have enough people. But and we are crazy enough to want shit like this. So write us, hear us, work with us. We have an Insta at bündnis.selbstbestimmung. That's where most people are. This podcast, Queerocracy Now, German and English. We comment anything. We go to the stage, get on our podcast. If you see some Nazis, na, die vielleicht nicht. But maybe if you're listening, you can learn something. It's not that hard. But stickers and mastodons, we have an account. We don't know how to make that yet. Stickers we'll get this evening. It's my fault.
Genau. Und damit vielen herzlichen Dank.
With that, many thanks. We have no time for questions, right?
Doch, ihr habt,
Or maybe a little.
5 Minuten.
We have 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Questions. If you have questions, get them in.
Ich sehe, dass das Internet Fragen hat.
I see that the internet has questions.
Ja, genau.
Yes.
Wie ist das mit der Informationsweitergabe?
How is it with the transference of information with non-trans people? The officers know the gender of those. The idea was in the Self-Determination Act, there was only supposed to be no relay of information regarding their personal status. And the idea was discussing that against these cards for refugees, but for all people. If you have a marriage with like your puppy wife or whatever, if you change your name, all these changes are also sent. Every change you made is sent to the police because maybe you'd only marry, transition or whatever to escape criminal prosecution. Next question.
Genau, nächste Frage. Steht niemand an dem Mikrofon? Ne?
Nobody at the
Das
microphones?
Internet bitte.
Back.
Oh, Entschuldigung, ich habe dich übersehen.
Hi, okay, ich bin ein bisschen zu klein. Die CDU möchte
The CDU wants to get rid of the Self-Determination Act. Do we know if the TSG, the Transsexuals Act, comes back or whatever comes back? What does that mean if there's nothing? I say my information is the Transsexuals Act can't come back if the
Mein Informationsstand ist, dass die
my information is that CDU has no real proposal on what is going to look. Instead, what happened if this goes through?
ist mir unklar.
I don't know.
Also es könnte zurückgehen auf
It
Einzelfallentscheidungen,
could go back to individual cases.
einfach keine Möglichkeit geben.
There could be no option.
Aber man muss, ich sage 2 Sachen dazu. Das eine ist, es ist so ein bisschen unklar, ob die
But it's just unclear if
CDU einfach
the CDU
einen Koalitionspartner finden wird, mit der sie das
can find a coalition partner they can do this with.
die SPD
Or
den Preis machen wird.
meaning how high the SPD or Greens will make their price. You know how to rely on the SPD or Greens? Not at all.
Das heißt,
That means
das ist, glaube ich, einfach offen. Und dann muss
That's unclear. And we have to say that the TSG that
out of order war.
is
Das heißt,
has been out of order for a long time.
Menschen,
As a trans person, we
ist in so einer Gesetz
know how to be in this ruin of law.
Teil des Gesetzes zurückgenommen werden.
So it means that maybe only parts of the law get pulled back, but most important is we have to organize now and attack this now. We have ideas like an election campaign. We have ideas how political intervention can look like in the next 6 weeks, if you want to. And if you want to, there's another question. I saw, but in front here. I heard the word commoditization, like commercialization. Could you say something for that?
Ah ja, genau. Also die Idee hier ist.
Oh yeah, the idea is.
Die Idee hier ist, dass also wir erinnern uns einmal kurz.
We remember this domiciliary law between this private economic usage and the Self-Determination Act. And what I skipped because of time was 2 aspects of becoming matter that can be bought and sold. Marco Buschmann said that he thought that the market will just regulate everything, and the market will regulate the accessibility of private rooms. Marco Buschmann explicitly said there will be saunas in Berlin that have an offer for trans people, and in other places outside of Berlin, this will not be possible. So the idea is making legal access into commodities. To the question, who is the highest bidder? But there's also another kind of commodification, like it's more commodifying policy itself. How does it get this far that politicians go there and say we don't want to decide anything? And our proposal is it is because politicians see themselves as producers of a product, and this product is politics or policy. And this means if nobody wants my product as a politician, I don't want to sell it, but I modify it in a way that will make it available to more people. And if I can't produce something that somebody wants, I'll try to regulate it with a law below law, like putting these to the courts or find another place that will decide this instead of the political decider. For example,
Gemeinsamer Bundesausschuss der Gesundheitsversorgung oder so.
Genau, der gemeinsame Bundesausschuss hat nämlich
like the common health council, which would say like there's this court case that says there's no lawful basis for medicinal support for trans people. That says we would like a decision. So there's 2 institutions that can do it. One is the parliament can do a law and say we'll regulate that in a way, and the other variant is, and that is what the social courts wanted, was that the common federal council can decide that. That is the highest gremium of healthcare providers, and that's like the highest Soviet. So all these things sit together, they make norms that are used, but they are not lawfully decided or democratically decided. So there's moving something. But the leader of the Common Federal Council,
Das Problem ist, der gemeinsame Bundesausschuss hat zum Beispiel die gleiche Abkürzung wie auch der Generalbundesanwalt.
which is a problem because it has the same abbreviation as other places. Like, for example, the General Federal Jurist or the Game Boy Advance. But we want it to be a political decision. We want that accessibility of gender-affirming care we want it to be a political decision by political deciders. And right now, government exploded, and you can see this commodification. You can see is of like the understanding of politicians themselves and of how this stuff is regulated. Who wants what? Answer the question, yes. Yes, thanks to this good explanation, we don't have any more questions for more questions. Time for more questions. Another big applause. Thank you a lot. Thanks a lot.
Ihr könnt uns, das Internet kann uns die Fragen.
The internet can send us your questions and we'll answer them decentrally at a different place. It's very interesting. Let's fight together. Thanks a lot.